All right.
I am spending my afternoon and his morning with Mr. Nojilana, someone that I've met briefly through a common friend. I don't know if we have any history that you can remember, but I remember just being in a house party and celebrating a friend who just purchased and revamped a property. I don't know, man. That night for me is best forgotten. You even remember?
Yeah, I remember very clearly. And before that, we met once before at uh, at a funeral in Tata. But
Uh,
then you were mostly with people I was with at the funeral, and we just had a brief chat. And then when we met at that nice housewarming, it was our second engagement.
yes, yeah, I suspected. I think that my memory is not to be trusted. I know. So I have a life partner, my wife, who knows, and she tends to remind me of these things, and I relegate the task of memory to her. So for that night, I want to drink to that night, and it's a continuation of that conversation, I suppose, because we were in a house party, celebrating a housewarming, and also a peer, a friend, a lady that had bought a property, and you are also involved in property as an entrepreneur and also as an investor. And I want us to sort of explore that side of you and what conversations are happening around you. But also, you are a very well established, I would say, an industrial automation specialist. I'm really interested in that and how you merge these together. But let us know what you want to talk about.
Uh, oh, that exactly, Mr. Mwazi. These two professions of mine, my profession in industrial automation,
Yes.
as well as in real estate, and basically how the two coexist and why they are important for each other in my life, and why one is very critical to the other's success. And everything that has needed to change, everything that has needed to happen, the structures and system that needed to be in place for the two to coexist and thrive, basically.
Maybe also you can tell us because I see you are basically living between two continents and countries. I don't want you to talk about things you shouldn't talk about, but if
Yeah,
you can, like
yeah,
how is that?
yeah, basically living between two continents, one in my professional career, one in my business career, and basically what it is I am in the automotive and automotive components manufacturing space. I specialize in PLC and robotic programming, and I basically work through various organizations and various agencies to basically get involved in these projects globally. So wherever they're putting up a new factory, that is where you will find me anywhere around the world. So yeah, so that is basically what I do, and I really want to speak about how that started, how that came about, and how it relates to my real estate. So first, I want to speak about why the two coexist. And in order for me to do that, I really want to give you a bit of background to myself, a bit of my backstory in entrepreneurship, where the love for entrepreneurship came from, and how I got into entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship, I will not say something I chose. Entrepreneurship is something I grew up in. because of how I was raised. I was born in Newton, raised in Port Elizabeth to a single mom. And so back at home, there was a lot of selling going on. You know, in the neighborhoods, there's always that house that sells sweets, that sells ipombi, that sells it. So we were that house back in the day. And
All our early earnings were taken up in that household.
basically, yeah. Yeah, so I grew up in that kind of environment. So my mother used to do a lot of work. She's single parent, raising three kids. At the time, she was a teacher. She has since retired, and yeah, so everyone in the household was basically involved in helping out the household. So earliest memories, 8 years old, with my 5-year-old little sister, riding a bus to school. We always used to get a pack of sweets each, and we used to sell sweets in the bus. That was basically our daily commute. We understood the concept of a bag of sweets with 100 sweets inside, costing 4 Rand 50, selling a sweet for 10 cents, and coming home with 10 Rand. So 2 bags of sweets every day. We were coming home with 20 Rand. So that was entrepreneurship. So as far as I can remember in my life, there was always something going on. I was every network marketing thing you can think of, I was probably involved. Every kind of business I was probably in. So throughout high school, throughout varsity, throughout my working life. So as I was developing in the professional space, my entrepreneurship was also developing and progressing as well, because over the years, over all of the failed businesses, I was starting, I call myself Mr. Try and Fail. So I was trying and failing throughout the years, and I was just developing as an entrepreneur. So that is basically where business started for me, entrepreneurship. And so why did it become important for me to have a successful business? Because there came a point where it became a necessity for me to have a good business, a thriving business, a successful business. Why was it so important? The short answer to that, Mr. Nwazi, is it was because of my career choice. It was the career I decided to go into. I know it doesn't make sense right now because my career is doing very well, and it's taking good care of me and my family, and it's given me the opportunity to travel the world and to work on awesome projects. But in the beginning, I did not know that. In the beginning, I did not know how broad the career was. I did not know the opportunities that lay in the space. I did not know that this was a critical skill in a specialized field that is in high demand globally. I had no idea. I was just a guy who was interested in basically the work. So there was.
Maybe you can briefly tell us what is industrial automation?
So industrial automation basically is, I can describe it with manufacturing process. So if you look at any factory, you can look at Coca-Cola, you can look at VW, any facility that manufactures, you have machines and you have robots that basically perform the automatic tasks of the manufacturing. So before automation, a robot is just a piece of steel, a piece of hard metal that is sitting there that can do absolutely nothing. So I am one of the people that come in and actually program the robots to perform the specific tasks required to manufacture whatever needs to be manufactured, along with the machines as well. So I am the guy responsible for automating basically the manufacturing process. So I write all of the programs for the robots and the PLCs to make sure that the product is built. The product is built within a specific time. I ensure machine availability. I ensure how many products can be produced in a specific time. Also responsible for the training of all of the workers that are going to be working on the machines, as well as putting up the documentation for said machines. Yeah, so that is industrial automation in a nutshell. It's basically the programming side of the manufacturing processes. So it's spread across. It's very broad. It's very wide. It's not industry specific. So anywhere, I've been working in oil and gas. I've been working in food and beverages. I've been working in mostly in automotive and automotive components manufacturing. Yeah. So
Okay.
that is
I
basically.
won't disturb any further. You can continue with your presentation. We'll talk on the other side.
Well, I appreciate the questions, so keep them coming as
Okay.
soon as they come. So in my career, with this career, similar to entrepreneurship, this career was predetermined for me. I don't feel like I had much of a choice. There was never any uncertainty about what I wanted to do with my life. There was never any questions in varsity after studying what's going to happen, where am I going to go. I've always known from teenagehood that this is the path I wanted to take. And so how did this certainty come about? Um, well, I was lucky enough to attend a high school that had companies that visited the high school. And they visited our high school, and they were interested in speaking to the top academic performers. And during high school, I used to be very strong academically, and I always had the opportunity to visit these companies. So they would come, they would visit us, they would take us to their facilities and their factories, they would show us what they do, they would interview us, and they would give us the opportunity to get bursaries from them. I was one of the lucky people to get one of these bursaries in high school already. And part of the bursary requirements and what they basically required from us was that we do vacation work. So basically every vacation, June holiday, December holiday, we were always in their facilities. And my bursary I got from one of the big multinational automotive manufacturing companies in Nelson Mandela Bay. And I had the opportunity to go to the facilities every school holiday, every December, every June holiday. I had the opportunity, and they would take us to the different departments, maintenance and engineering, and we had the opportunity to shadow the people that were working there and learn from them. So for me, they took me to maintenance, and in that maintenance department, I had the opportunity to spend time with the artisans, the electricians, the fitters and turners, and basically learn from them, learn from their job, watch them work. They taught me basic hand skills, but throughout all of this, there were always these breakdowns and these machine issues that they were always rushing back and forth to. And I used to watch them work, and there was a lot of struggles. I used to watch production standing. I used to watch bosses panicking about lack of production. And throughout all of this, there was always this whisper that they're waiting for a specific person, that this person is coming. They're waiting for this person is coming. They're 20 minutes away. And you would see these people coming, and they would open their laptops, and 2 minutes later, this problem that has taken very skilled artisans hours to solve and they were struggling with, this guy was in and out in 2 minutes, and they were always in a hurry. They left to go deal, basically put out another fire somewhere else. And I was extremely fascinated about like, who are these people? What are they doing? And they told me, no, those are programmers. And so as much as I was shadowing these guys, I had this fascination with these programmers. What are programmers? What are they doing? So I was always watching them as a teenager, seeing them show up, opening their laptops in and out, 2 minutes, every problem is solved. And I was like, I need to know what that is. And during my first ever vacation work, my first ever exposure in a factory, I had an opportunity to work. There was a lady there. Her name was Nadine. I don't remember her surname. She took us. I was the youngest there. I was with a group of fourth year mechatronics students, and I was the only young one. And she took us to a training board they had prepared with this specific software that the programmers were using. And she basically gave us a task to set this training station up and to write a small program. I was lucky enough to be with the more experienced older students who were doing their final years. And I was involved in the setting up of this training station and the writing of my first program. So at 18, I did my very first hardware configuration and wrote my very first small program. And that is where the bug bit for me. And I knew from that moment that there was absolutely nothing else for me. There was absolutely nothing else. That is where I was going to be. That is where I was going to start working. So fast forward to a few years later, I start working. So I got my first job. Company hired us, and in my first job, sometime somewhere during my varsity years, I had come across what was the best piece of advice I'd ever received. I tried thinking I could not pinpoint where I got this advice from. Did someone tell me this advice? Did I read it from a book? Was I watching a video on YouTube? Did I hear it on the radio? But I'm not really sure where the advice came from, but I got this piece of advice and it was the best thing I'd ever received at the time. So that advice was be careful where you get your advice from because people will only advise you to the level they are on. And at the time, that was basically gospel to me, and it served me for many years. I eventually outgrew, I grew it eventually. I no longer subscribe to that because I know that you can learn a lot more from a person's failures than you can learn from their successes. I know that just because a person's opinion um, does not align with what I'm trying to achieve, it doesn't invalidate it. It does not invalidate that person's opinion. I kind of learned the importance of perspective, and but at the time, I was really, really stuck on that advice. I was really, really stuck. So I used to look at my managers and my supervisors and all the guys who had the 15 years experience in the industry, and I used to study their lives. And they were doing great for themselves. However, I've always wanted more. I think the thing of studying at NNMU and staying off campus in Summerstrand after coming from the location, and you have this 4 years of walking up and down at a 45-minute walk to where I was living. And I used to walk through these beautiful neighborhoods and I used to look at these beautiful houses. I used to watch people driving their boats into their yards. I used to watch these awesome cars. I used to watch kids wearing school uniforms, private schools, so private that poor people did not know about them. I used to watch all of this as I was walking up and down every day for years. And I've always had it in my mind that this is the kind of environment I want to find myself in one day. When all is said and done and I'm working and things are good, it was engraved in me basically. So in the workspace, I used to watch these guys and I had this feeling that, hey, I love what I'm doing. I'm really enjoying this work. And another thing, Mr. Mwazi, I'm one of those people who never had any career ambitions. I've never had any ambitions to become a manager. I've never had any ambitions to lead a department, never had any ambitions to be engineering manager. None of that. I've only always wanted to be a programmer. I've only always wanted to be as good as I can humanly get in programming. I wanted to get field exposure. I wanted to work in many different fields, get exposed to many different things, and just become as good as I can in this one thing. I knew I
I
was.
saw I saw a post where you said that there's no such thing as a soft life, and just thinking about your experience with Strand and all of that. Um, do you want to say
Yeah.
something about that?
Yes. There's no such thing as a soft life. People work extremely hard for that appearance of soft. So what will appear soft to the person standing from the outside looking in, there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. People work extremely hard. So that notion of life will be easy, life will be soft, I'm going to be living this life. We can talk a lot more. I've accepted the term soft moments. I call it soft moments now. We have soft moments in life. You will have that moment where you're at a beach, where you are sitting and chilling. Those are all moments. Otherwise, life as a whole is hard. People work hard for what they have. And basically, that was me embracing the concept of hard work and the fact that it's always gonna be hard, no matter how it looks, no matter how you want it to look. You know, that life, the big house, the boats, everything
And,
comes
and
with a lot of
and
hard
the
work.
fact that once you acquire these aspirations, these assets, this soft life, it needs to be maintained, isn't it?
It's
You know, if it's a
to be
house,
tamed.
it needs to be painted. Then there's plumbing. Then there's a crack wall here. Then there's an alarm system that needs to be in place and needs to make sure that it actually does what it does. And so I have a feeling that we could be chasing a mirage, but I guess it would be what kind of life are you willing to settle for? And I see even in this professional life, you are also doing the entrepreneurship and the property and student accommodation life quite well. How's your soft
Mm.
life coming along?
Uh, so, Mr. Mnaz, to get to that soft life, like I said, I was watching my colleagues, my older colleagues, and I'm like, hey, that is not soft. That's not the kind of life I want. So I had it in me that if I want to continue doing this work, for me not to resent my career, for me not to resent what I love, I needed to protect it and protect it. How do I protect it? I had to find a way outside of this work that will build this wealth for me, that will pay for this life that I want, which will enable me to continue doing this work without the pressure of getting this life from this work. So while watching my colleagues work, I had it in me that, hey, my man, you need to get something going because this work that you love and you're passionate about is not going to build you the life that you want. That was my realization, and that was why it was so important for me to succeed in business. So all of
I
this.
guess it's like that. It's like that to many of us. Generally, you have to have up to at least four streams of income in order to minimum, to have a proper, life. You can get income from yourself as a person, your professional being, and then you can get income from whatever you would have produced. I do that using my books that I write. And then I also speak every now and then publicly for pittance. That's another sort of income. And then there's the services that my company does, Black Hat and all the work that we do, along with the fact that I work at actually Nelson Mandela University. So, and I still feel that I need to strike some kind of a balance. And you also talk about this balance, which I want to hear your views again, your work-life balance,
Yeah.
knowing very well
Ah.
that that you have so much on your plate and you have to travel in between. You have to make sure that so many balls are in the air and none of them would fall to the ground in order to have a soft life.
Yeah, Mr. Mnwazi, I came to the quick realization that work-life balance does not exist. I had to basically change my way of thinking and work on the mindset at home as well. I had work-life balance does not exist. We need to start looking more into work-life integration, because if you are an entrepreneur and you're running a business, work home becomes work. There is no not taking work home when home is work. So there has to be a level of integration. You need to look at work-life integration. There is no separating of the two. There's no balancing them out. They need to be one thing. And I even think back to my childhood, during the afternoon, sitting at home, in a typical Black household, the whole TV schedule, it was Days of Our Lives, Bold and the Beautiful. You watch Isidingo, the comedy on SABC 1, 7:30 News, Generations, whatever happens next. During that time, we were making Gqeberha. We were making the straws, we were making these things. It was part and parcel of our day-to-day living. Everyone was involved. We were all participating. It was part of life. It was family time together with working. It was all incorporated within the household. So it is a very, very similar situation for me in my household right now. Everyone is working on the business. Everyone understands the business. Everyone understands what's needed. Everyone is part and parcel of the growth and the success of the business. So it was very, very important to fix home, in that sense, fix the mindset of home regarding work and life. And we go to site, we have building projects, we are together, family, we're there, we do what we need to do. From there, we go sit at a restaurant together as a family. It's part of life. So that is my stance on, when you talk work-life balance. You really, really need the buy-in of the family. You need the buy-in of the wife. You need the buy-in of the mom, the sisters, everyone that's in your life. You need to have that kind of relationship with your friends, with the people you spend a lot of time with. It has to be integrated somehow. Work-life integration. That is, so basically, that is the that is where the work-life, that is one of the adjustments, that I needed to make. And it basically is one of the major reasons how my industrial automation career and my real estate career can coexist.
You just brought a thought also, which is something that I never really talk about. It's an experience that we didn't like at the time. But upon growing up, you realize that actually this has been a good experience. My aunt would always bring something from Johannesburg whilst I was in King Williamstown as village. She would bring steel wools for the pot. You make your pots to shine and clean.
Mm-hmm.
She would bring this big ball of this thing. or bag, unomgana, that bag. Yeah, should bring that. And then now we have to pull it out and roll it and cut it so that we can go out and sell it. And we'll have to sell, each of us will be given a portion, and then you know that if you go this side, go 24, you go 29, go, and then you work all the zones 1 to zone 10 as well each, and see how to actually get this merchandise to go out. If it was not that, it would be spices, like spices. And she had these, it's not Tupperware, but we used to call the Tupperware the plastic containers, all colorful and stuff with white covers, lids. And she would just, we would measure, an appropriate measurement so that we can go and sell these at a particular price. And we knock it at certain doors and houses, and we knew who would eventually buy a particular product we were selling. We knew the old ladies and the mamas would be buying the spices and all of that. And the last one would be, that I remember, would be indam wesbane. You have this paraffin.
Paraffin lamps, yeah.
Yes, and then you have Lamike. She would bring a big roll, and then we have to measure. She measure one, and then we all cut a similar measurement, and then we all cut and sort of, that's a production line. That's an entrepreneurship school starting. We didn't like it. We would walk, it will be hot, and come back, and then we know that actually things are sold out and things like that. You just remind me of that, and I never sort of thought of bringing up here in these conversations.
Yeah, those are the things that molded us, and it's those are the things we need to start looking at introducing into our households. We should not look at our businesses as something we should keep away from the household. We should not look at our businesses as something that we need a balance from. You know what I mean? It is very important for us to bring them into the households and get the whole family, because these are the things that really molded us. It didn't feel like it at the time, but they were very important for us in our development. Yeah. So, as to find my thoughts real quick. So fast forward to real estate. So, like I said, succeeding in business became very important in my life. The success in business will allow me to continue in industrial automation, continue being a programmer, continue working the work that I love and that I'm extremely passionate about. It will give me an opportunity to continue learning and growing in this field without the pressure of this career building a life for me. So trying and failing multiple business ventures over the years, multiple business ventures. I finally came across real estate. Real estate was never a business. I just wanted to invest in real estate. So I'll speak briefly about how it moved from investing in real estate to running a real estate business. So real estate was an investment tool I found to make sense for me. So I had these retirement annuities with your old mutuals and all of these companies. And I had monies that were going into those every month. It was 1,340, I remember specifically, 1,340 I was putting away every month. And that was through meeting a financial advisor, talking about how I would like to retire, basically what I'm getting at work in my profession. If I want to add to that provident fund, what I would need to put away monthly to get what I want in the end. And when I came across real estate, it wasn't something I was very interested in, not something I studied, but I might have, like I said, read a book, I might have watched a video, I might have heard a talk, I might have, but something really got me to look into real estate. And just the idea of buying a property and renting it out, even if I'm not making profits and I have to pay in a shortfall. I know if the property goes up in value, it appreciates, and rentals go up every year. And there will come a time where the shortfall will disappear and I will start getting a bit of cash flow, making some money. And at the end of it all, during retirement, after 20 years, 25, 30 years, I will still have this property with the bond paid off, with the rent coming in and a lot of money. So I looked at my investment account and I looked at the concept of property and I'm like, okay, why don't I just make this my retirement plan? So I'm okay with any investment that will have a shortfall of around 1,340. I'm already paying that out anyway. So if I have a rental coming in that's not covering the expenses, I'm okay with paying in because the rent will go up. So that was my initial take on real estate for retirement. And then I had a daughter by the time I got my first property. And I looked, I'm like, hey, in a few years, this one is going to need to go to grade one. I need to start thinking education fund. Same concept, real estate. Why don't I get another property? I will rent out, and whatever cash flow will come the year she needs to go to school in about 4 years' time, where she needs to start grade one, it will have a bit of cash flow, which will then cover the monthly school fees. After 12 years of schooling, we would have built up so much equity in this property. The bond will be almost paid off, and we will have rental coming in because rent goes up every month. The bond stays the same. After 12 years, we'll have the equity. It will pay for her university. We continue paying it. And when she graduates and starts working, she can then take the property to continue renting out or have it to live in. I'm like, okay, here's an education fund for the child. Let me look at this real estate thing. So each property had a single purpose. So this is for retirement. This has a name. So even my daughter to this day, she says landry, I'm in school. So she does not know the concept, but she had the question, why are we buying all of these? And I had to explain that. And she still refers to one of the properties as into school. So that was the concept, and I was okay with that idea up until the first renovation that we did. Um, Found a property, stayed in that property for a while, and decided to renovate this property. It was a nice area, low rain, but it was from a woman who received it as an inheritance. She stays all the way in Joburg. She's never seen this property. She's just been collecting rent for years. So it was not taken care of, not well maintained. It was just in a terrible condition. Got this property and spent some money fixing this corporate property. This property, just a few numbers, it was renting for 4.4. Renovated this property when we left and got a bond for 535. So I was paying about 4.6 per month. So I'm like, no, we need to fix it. We can't rent it for 4.4. At the end of the contract, we did not renew the lease. We fixed the property. After fixing the property, the new rental was 8,600. And that was the light bulb moment. Um, so finding something you can add value to. And not only that, when I did a valuation of the property after the renovation, buying it for 535, it was then worth 850,000. And that was the switch that flipped around real estate, that changed how I look at real estate. I had to find out what's going on. So
No,
so
no,
I knew,
no pun intended on that flipping.
yeah.
Which that
No
flip,
pun
and you're flipping the
intended.
property and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to learn. how real estate work, I really, really needed to invest in educating myself around real estate because I have this thing now with a bond of 4.6 that is bringing in 8.6 a month. So there's no shortfall I'm paying. I am getting cash flow immediately. I don't need to wait 3 or 4 years just from a few value adds that I put in that property. Not only that, bought it for
And how
535.
long would it take for you to break even from the investment you've made to upgrade the landlook, the property?
So what I used basically, I was working slave shifts at a company in Port Elizabeth, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, because there's not too many of us in this profession, and you find that there's only one or two in every factory, if the factory even has. So we work long hours in this profession, and the plus side of that, we worked a lot of overtime, and I was able to save quite a bit because I had no life. I basically had 2 to 3 hours a day in the house before I needed to sleep to wake up for the very next shift. So that gave the ability to save a lot. So I did have 100,000 in saving. That is what I used for this property. I bought it for 535. I spent 100,000 updating the kitchen, updating the bathroom, redoing the floors, painting the whole house, fixing the gate, and cleaning up the yard. So, as well as about 54 paying the lawyers, attorneys for the transfers and the bond registration. So, all in, I was at about 680 something. But money from me personally out of my pocket was the 150,000.
That,
So,
that's good.
out of my pocket.
It's
So So the return, as you're mentioning, Mr. Nwaz, like I was saying, this property now, the bond is 4.6. I'm getting 8.6. I learned something that's when I learned about the term refinancing, that you can get a further advance or you can refinance for the value, what the current value is. So I looked, okay, for 850, what would the rent be? What would the bond be if I took that? And I saw that the bond will be about a 7.3, 7.4. And I'm like, but the rent is already 8.6. So what happens if I take this 300,000 that is available in this house? That will pay immediately the 150 I had spent out of my pocket. And there would be another 150. What happens with this 150? I learned that that is yours. That is an income for you. And not only is it an income for you, it is also tax-free because it is seen as a loan. It's like going to Capitec and
yeah.
asking for 200. So it's tax. So I learned about that tax-free cash out. And I'm like, okay, so the only responsibility we have to ourselves is making sure that this property is constantly occupied so that this new bond is covered and we can basically do what we want with this money that we pulled out. So what happens if we use it now and go get another one? So that was the the new understanding in business in real estate. So my thing was, okay, so what are the downsides? I study downsides a lot. So after leaving formal employment and starting freelancing and started traveling with the industrial automation, a lot of people looked at it as a risk. It's a very big risk. How and like I studied the downside. It would be a risk, I say, if you do it, but for me, I had already built a real estate portfolio that had an income that could cover my basic expenses. So I'm not risking by leaving formal employment to be able to explore projects that I want to do within the automation space. So I had to analyze the risk as well in real estate. So what is the risk of so it's basically the concept of flipping a house, but instead of selling the house, you keep the house, you just pull out the money and rent it out. So exact same concept, but it's not a taxable event when you pull out the money like it would be when you're selling it. So what is the downside? So the downside is you will have all of these bonds piling up. What happens if you don't have tenants? What happens if you have vacancies and there are no people available to pay off these bonds? So that is what we needed to look at. So it's basically looking at the concept. You go to the bank gives you a loan to buy an asset, and you can borrow money against this asset and get someone else to pay for this money that you took. So that was, I thought it was too good to be true. It sounds too good to be true. It was something I needed to explain. I don't pay, I just get a loan to get an asset. I borrow against the asset and someone else pays for what I borrowed. Um, I had to explore that. So the downside is we need to figure out now how do we minimize this downside, because if you have no people, you cannot pay off these bonds. You have a lot of things. You have foreclosures, you have repossessions, you have your name basically. You credit is king. I mean, you need your score. You need to take care of that. It will basically bankrupt us. So we knew that is a possibility. We knew we had to figure out how do we then manage this risk. So we had to come up with a way that would generate a steady flow of tenants. We had to create this production line that will be constantly producing tenants, that we would have more tenants than we actually have properties, and we need to create a waiting list problem for ourselves. We How do we get to this situation? Um, we basically need to find a market that has an issue we can solve, basically. So we studied a few markets, three markets in particular. We looked at the intern markets, intern coming into the space, coming into working life, probably not in a city you're from, in a new city. How do we get them situated? How do we get them comfortable? How do we make sure that they are not alone, that they are around other people similar to them that are experiencing this new life away from the schooling system? And what is it that we can set up for that market? We looked at we call them the average South African. That's the name we use for them. But mostly we look at the single mother with a child in school, either with a car or without a car, that is not working a great job, that cannot afford to pay the rents, the Lorraine or the Western suburbs. How do we guarantee safety for them? How do we get them closer to areas of economic activity? How do we get them closer to the schools? How do we get them closer to the public transports? How do we studied that market, and we also studied the student market as well. So basically in all of these markets, there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy. We had to find our blue ocean. Basically, you have a red ocean and you have a blue ocean. And basically, we looked at the NNMU. That is where all of the action is happening. That is where all of the accommodations are coming up. That is where all of the competition is. If you're offering the same thing, um, price is king. Basically, the cheapest guy is always going to win, and we never want to compete on price. So we needed to find a market that is not overly competitive or populated. That is when we looked into the private college market on the student side. Private colleges are not regulated for off-campus accommodation. There is no on-campus accommodation. It's basically the wild, wild west in private college student accommodation. There's no body that basically regulates what happens with these accommodations for these people. So we we basically had decided that we need to come in and step into this market, and we need to become a recognizable institution that will be recognized not only by the students, but the actual learning institutions, also the bursary and the funding providers. We had to create a situation where we are the go-to people for the private college market in our selected area. And that is basically how we solved the problem of having a constant flow. So we could then, so the passion for student accommodations came secondary. It was a secondary thing which came from
Of a
looking.
nice problem you've created for yourself.
Yeah, so we had to become ghost parents and go just study the market to see what are the kids paying in these areas. And that is when we saw the conditions that our people are living under in these student accommodations for these private colleges. That is where we saw the standard. And I tried to compare it to what I had when I was studying, because I stayed in a very nice area. I had the walk, I had a good situation set up, and I couldn't understand how people were okay with providing what I saw. And that is where the need came to actually provide something that goes beyond a roof, beyond a bed. That is why we have all of these offerings that we have. So the strategy, how did we then, um, how do we set up for this? So we had to have the vision initially. What do we want? We want to be this recognized institution. We want to, let's look 5 years into the future. So you have, what do you want to be? You're a recognized institution. What are your unique selling point? What makes you different? Okay. You offer more than a bed. You have all of these offerings that you have. We do quite a lot of things. And what is your target revenue? So we had a crazy number we put. This is what we currently have in real estate. This is what we're doing. And this is what we would like to have in 5 years. Put a big number, thumbs-out number. So we had to, one of your guests said it back best, and you also said it earlier, the dots always connect best backwards. So all of these failed business
Steve Jobs.
ventures,
Must give
yeah,
credit to Steve Jobs.
um, the dots connect best. So it doesn't always work with failures as well, because I know struggled with getting fined for not adhering to Nelson Mandela Bay bylaws, erecting billboards back in the day. Had to feel I got um, a rude awakening when friends turned a certain way. Then you learn that, hey, you need to go beyond trust. You need to work on agreements. You learn, and you know it takes you back to this point. So this is how you need to set up based on all of your experiences. So it doesn't have to work the other way. It can work the other way as well. You can look at exactly where you need to be, where you want to be, what do I need to get to this point. So we want to be in recognizable institutions. We have our unique selling points. We have our target revenue. What would we need to have to get there? This is what we would need. What would we need for that? This is what we would need. What would we need for this? This is what we would need. What would we need for this? This is what, work all the way back to where we are, and then start connecting the dots forward to get to basically the basics of goal setting. And that is what we did. So in order to become these people, we need to have a way, we need to create a system to find these people. We need a way to find them. We need a way for them to find us. We need, once we have these leads, we need a way to convert these leads into revenue. Once we've connected these leads into revenue, we need a way to keep them with us, to avoid all of the turnover costs. And we need to create these. So that is how our sales and marketing division was born. So we need the marketing for them to find us, for us to find them. We need sales, all of these leads that come, all of these inquiries, all of these people calling. We need a system to convert them. And once we have them, we need an aftermarket situation. How do we keep them? What are the deliberate efforts we are performing every day to make sure we keep these people, make sure they stay with us long term? So for that, we needed to create a structure, we needed to create a system, and we needed to find a person. We need to create a way for this one person who's going to look after all of this to succeed. So we've had a hard time with hiring. I'll get into that shortly. So besides getting them, our unique selling point, what differentiates us? Also our expanding, we need to expand drastically. We need to build more. We need to buy more properties. We need to work with contractors. We need to source deals. We need to find deals. We need to the operations of this. We need a system to get these properties. How do we keep getting these properties without, because we're not millionaires, we do not have the kind of money to just buy buildings. We do not have, how are we going to get these properties? How are we going to expand to get to the point where we reached our target revenue for that year? We needed to create a system. We needed to create a structure that is going to basically have deliberate efforts every day to ensure that we are expanding either every year, every semester, or every quarter. We are expanding. We are bringing in new beds. We have more beds. We have more beds. And we need another system to track all of this. We need the paperwork. We need the admin side. We need all of this. So those were the pillars. And then we also need a body that will overlook all of this, that will work in the business, that makes sure all of these things are running in the order they're supposed to. All of these things are happening the way they're supposed to. There's open communication, people, there's accountability. And we need a further body that works on the business, outside of the business, that works on the growth of the business, that works on building, expanding this, improving on these systems. That is not, sometimes when you're inside the box and you are working on the day-to-day functions of the business, it's hard to see where it's lacking, or where it can improve, or where it can be more efficient, or where it can be optimized. So we need another body that stands outside and watches the business work and sees where it can improve. That is the role that I took in the business. And that is the role that gives me the freedom to continue in my industrial automation. That's why I can live this double life, South Africa business and traveling for automation, and able to contribute in the business and the growth. So the person that's running the show holds me accountable for increasing capacity, finding these deals, and getting more and more and more. And I hold them accountable for always filling up the spaces, because it's all here. It's your responsibility. And we had to create structures and systems to make sure that everyone succeeds. We had a problem with hiring because we got great people. We focus so much on finding the right kind of person, great people, experienced people who could help us, and they did not succeed with us because we were not ready for them. We basically did not have the structure. They knew, they were coming from the field. For us, it's trial and error. We don't have business education. We do not have formal training around business. So it is basically us trying to figure this out. And we get people in that come from established structures, and they know how things are supposed to work. And we've always had a thing. We know what we want to achieve. We know how we want it. We know how it's done. We've heard how it's done. We read and see how it's done, but we know how we want to do it. So that was the big problem. So we moved away from looking at the right people, and we started focusing more on building the right system. We need to we need to manage systems and not people. We need to improve on systems and not people, and be able to take anyone, and put them in this system and train them, and they will have all the tools they need to succeed in the system. So that was our focus at the time. And I started to understand, I never understood the analogy of do not hire for skills, hire for attitude. I never understood. I used to look at Simon Sinek and I'm like, hey, Sinek, what do you mean, dude? How is attitude going to program these robots? I don't understand. I need a bit more. And in that I understood it was now the
It's also
important thing for us.
organizational culture. It's also the
Yeah.
fact that you could have all the skills, but your arrogance can build everything we've built, and you could be coming from an environment where everything is handed down to you. It's handed to you. The phone is working. You have a table. You have a chair. You have an office rent paid for. You have internet, and now you are coming into a space where people are building and are constructing these things from what
Scratch.
they have. And the most qualified person might also be expensive, and you would not be able to sustain this amount of money, especially sign a long-term contract for such a person. So that, I mean, these are some of the challenges I ran into when running my company. I started realizing that I know who I need. I know the kind of capacity that I need, but I can't sustain it. And also to have these people, they need to be accommodated reasonably at a professional sort of level and expectations. These are some of the challenges because we're learning business from what you are saying, trial and error. We're learning business from maybe also seeing an external stimuli and an opportunity, and that you are responding to as an entrepreneur or someone that would probably want to meet that need. We are drawing to a close. We've gone past our time, but I still want you to sort of conclude because these are very sober and critical ways of thinking about constructing systems, especially as a leader, because you just walk in sometimes and think that your good thinking, your Mandelic kind of a voice, your Mandelic kind of an attitude and democracy and all of that is going to help, but it usually doesn't work in business. You need to be sober. You need to know what you're doing, and you are speaking exactly to that. And I fear that we might actually be cutting you short. I think we might need you for the second time, and especially talking about that, your planning and objectives, and driving and making sure that the vision is aligned, the objectives, the goal setting, and all of that, and putting systems to carry that vision, and staffing that system, because now you actually have created an organization that needs people to function. Maybe a few words of closure, and maybe any important thing you want to mention before we end.
Yeah, Mr. Mwazio, this is very, very detailed. Yeah, I can go on forever on the
I
topic
appreciate
of
it.
real estate. And yeah, man. So most important thing for us was we've always knew what staff complement we needed to be able to function in the future. And
Mm,
we created all of those. It's basically creating seeing into the future and showing up every day as that business that you are trying to build, and structure the business in a way that would be functioning in that time, And as you are starting to hit your milestones, you need to start expanding accordingly. And I talk about it as I use the high school analogy as well. Every time I speak to someone, they're always surprised at the projects that we are doing and what we're doing next. And I always say that it's just natural progression. After grade 10, you have to go to grade 11. I mean, you can celebrate it. However, it would be more tragic if you stayed in grade 10, so, and after that, you need to graduate, you need to pass matric, there needs to be a constant improvement. So a lot of these so-called goals have become obligations when you start looking at it in that sense, and you are obligated to do certain things because you really need to progress, and it has to be a steady, constant progression. Yeah, man. And yeah, so if you look into the future and you know exactly what you need and you work back towards, you will be able to recognize all of the milestones and all of the hard times and all of the difficult times. You know exactly where you're going, so it kind of makes it easier and more bearable to keep pushing. So that's real estate. Yeah, I would really appreciate that second session to go deeper into the actual setting of the strategies and actual goal settings and actual setting up how we did it and how we continue to work it, and what's working for us, what we are improving on, where we still need a lot of assistance, and basically how